Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. Now in today's video I've got a very special guest. I'm delighted to be joined by former Arsenal player David Hillier. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come on my channel. How are you doing?
Don't mind taking any time out of my day. That's absolutely fine. I'm doing very well and hope you are too.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I'm glad you're well, of course. I did want to kind of start off this by talking a bit about your journey at Arsenal, and then later on we can go on to talk a bit about Arsenal this season, and I'm really looking forward to getting your thoughts on that as well. But I did want to start off by your journey at Arsenal. I know you joined the club at 14, so do you want to just tell people a bit about how that came about?
Well, it was a different process, obviously, back in the day. There wasn't as these academies and stuff like that. So pretty much all clubs had their own area scouts who just watched school football and county football and stuff like that. And I got watched playing for my school by a very nice man called Fred Ricketts. I was training at Arsenal and Arsenal, Charlton, and Millwall at the same time. So back then you could train for more than one club. So from 12 to 14, I spent my time deciding which club I was going to hopefully sign for. And then at 14, I got asked by, I think it was Don Howe at the time, to sign Schoolboys, which I jumped at the chance.
I love that. And for you, did you always believe that you would break into the first team at Arsenal? Because obviously it is quite hard to get into the team and get those opportunities. So did you always believe that you would get into the first team?
I think my mentality, of course, yeah, I wanted to get into the first team, and we played at a club where we had other success stories coming through the youth ranks just in front of me. You know, Paul Merson, Tony Adams, Mickey Thomas, Rocastle, all players like that. So there was plenty of hope for a youngster at Arsenal. But I think most of the lads just wanted to play pro football. That was the thing, and to be at Arsenal, have that opportunity was amazing. But for me, it was all about just getting a contract the following year, getting through your schoolboys and getting an apprenticeship, and then doing your apprenticeship, and then getting sort of a couple of years under your belt as a pro. That was kind of the normal format then. You didn't really get shoved in the team really early as a 16 or 17-year-old unless you was super special. So it was a long-term goal, really. But yeah, I mean, making the debut and playing in sort of cup finals and that is every young lad's dream when he's in the playground kicking a ball around.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said, you know, it's just a great opportunity to get given as well. And I think, yeah, I love that. I did want to kind of ask you a bit about you in the first team. Obviously, you made 143 appearances and you were very successful with Arsenal. You won the league winners medal in the 1991 season. I just want to ask you a bit about that and what it was like to kind of win such an amazing thing with Arsenal that season.
Well, the first season was obviously I don't really remember too much about it because I was so young. It was every game was like a cup final for me. From my debut when I got called into the side in the old, well, it was a version of the old League Cup. I think it might have been called the Rumbelows Cup then, back in the day, or it might have been the Coca-Cola. But yeah, got me opportunity in that and managed to just hang around the first team all season. And George showed a lot of faith in me, kept me in the side. I was in there because my strengths were tackling and battling for the ball, just sort of a defensive midfielder. And yeah, it worked, and it was a fantastic season. Winning the league at the end of that was just unbelievable for it to be your debut season. But I was with a great a great bunch of lads. You know, obviously everyone was like a family there, a bit like they are now. It's got
Yeah.
that feeling now of being sort of the togetherness, which is what George drummed into us. But what I will say is, we from the youth team into the reserves into the first team, we did the same training. We practiced the same throw-ins, the same corners as the first team did. So when players came in, they knew what their job was. But that first year was something special, especially considering 2 years prior they'd won the league with that fantastic Mickey Thomas goal at the end against Liverpool to clinch it. So there was a lot of pressure on the club at that time to do well, and Jules took a gamble on a few youngsters, and yeah, it paid off for me. It was a couple of great seasons under George.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, and it's great that George Graham was able to keep that up, not just one season, but to keep doing it each season. I did want to actually get your thoughts on like George Graham, what it was like to play under him, because I feel like, Wenger gets the credit he deserves, which is rightly so, because he was probably one of our best managers. But for George Graham, sometimes I feel like he doesn't get as much credit that he deserves. Obviously, I feel like he is a legend of the club, in my opinion. And for you, what was it like to play under him?
Oh, my thoughts are the same as yours. I think he was
Yeah.
a legend of his time when he came to the club. He had a clear directive on how he wanted to play, what he wanted players to do, and he knew it'd work if he could get the players to sign up for it. And he did. He brought everybody in. A few of the players, I think at the time, I think one or two of them felt that it held them back in their game a tiny bit. They
Mm.
didn't want necessarily to play the long ball game. Didn't suit them, but George made it work. He was disciplined but fair.
Mhm.
So he'd let you relax and that, but he wouldn't have the Mickey taken out of him.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing is that he was an ex-player who obviously played under some good, honest managers, and he was, if nothing but honest with you. He totally told you exactly how it was whenever it was. He didn't pull no punches, and I think everybody respected that. And he kept it going. He had a good team around him with Theo Foley, and then later on Stuart Houston, Pat Rice, who stayed there
Mm.
with Arsene Wenger and was very much part of Arsene's success. So his legacies lived on, even in Stevie Bold. When you think that Stevie stayed on with Arsene Wenger after he'd started with George, and George had a good eye for a player. He made some really key signings. Mickey Thomas, Nigel Winterburn, Lee Dixon, Steve Bold, obviously Seaman. Some really key signings at the back there, and that man Ian Wright. So he was a pretty good one. So he did all right, George. And he's the only manager now that I still call Gaffer when I see him. I can't bring myself to call him George. That's like calling your dad by his first name.
Yeah, you just wouldn't do it. Yeah, I love that. I think for me, like as a younger fan, I probably know more about Wenger, but I think with George Graham, you just knew no one would mess with him, and I think he was quite like brutal and honest. But I think for each individual player, he probably had a great connection and knew how to get the right best out of each players. And yeah, I think George Graham was an amazing manager, and I spoke to Kevin Campbell a few weeks ago on it about George Graham, and everyone just has so many lovely things to say about him, but everyone does always say how honest he is, and I think it's a good thing because you know where to stand with him, and I think that's what makes him a good manager, that he was so respected by so many people. And um, I did also want to go on to talk a bit about some difficult times you faced at Arsenal. I know you missed a few cup finals, and I suppose I just want to know, how did you manage to deal with difficult times as a footballer, especially in those moments?
Well, yeah, I think from an injury point of view, when you
Mm.
when you're missing because I played in most of the games up until both of them finals when I got
Mhm.
injured. In the in I think it was about in the March.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, disappointing, but because the team was so closely knit, I didn't miss out on anything. I still went away with the team
Yeah.
for all of the cup final build up. Still in and around the team. We only had one physio, so the physio that was working with me worked with the rest of the team all day, Gary Lewin. So he was always in and around the first team. But it is difficult when you look back. It's only one game, but it is the biggest one. And I do feel like maybe I could have made a difference, or I could have done something extra special in one of them games. It's what you dream about when, like I said, when you're running around the school
Mhm.
playground. You dream about scoring a goal in the last minute of the FA Cup final with the last kick, and I don't think that ever leaves you. But I dealt with it because I had a good group of players around me, and
Mm.
I think being brought up in football, you're kind of trained by disappointment, if you like. You've
Mm.
got to, everyone's. I was successful when I was when I was 8, 9, and 10, the teams I played in generally won by a cricket score every week. But occasionally you play the one team who were as good as you. Normally included Kevin Campbell in it because we came from the same area, and Kev's team was one of the other really good Sunday sides. And you'd lose, and you had to accept disappointment. And I think that's a key part of the game. You get loads of knockbacks, you have trials with clubs, and it doesn't go well. Even throughout your career, you're on trial still at the end of every contract. So yeah, you learn to live with disappointment. But I got through them okay, and had some great years. Just disappointing, probably, that I'd cut it so short. I probably should have took another year, not gone to Portsmouth for a year, left that, and tried under Arsene a little bit, because he really had something going. And that's probably one of my biggest disappointments about anything I missed out on, was missing out on that part of my potential career.
Yeah, I think as well, like, I think with Wenger, I think he definitely changed football, English football especially, and how it was viewed. And yeah, I think it's always hard when you have those regrets. But I think, like you said, with injuries, I think you can't really change them. It's something that just happens in the game, and it can be really tough because, like you said, especially as like a young boy, it's probably those games that you dream of playing in, and it can be really frustrating, and you can think, I could have made a difference, or if the team lost, I could have done something better. So I think it's always quite difficult when you miss out in those moments. But I think, of course, like, it's part of football, and you can't really control it. It just is what it is, unfortunately. But I did want to kind of talk on some positives, because at Arsenal, you had a great time there. You're very successful. You said about you had a few regrets, but are you proud of everything that you achieved and accomplished at the club?
Oh, unbelievably, yeah. I mean, I've got a couple of 3 cup wins under my belt, a championship, FA Youth Cup, going right back in the day. It started off with successes, but the biggest thing that I achieved, I think, at that club, and I'm fortunate enough now, I still go back and do commentary. I work for the club, for Arsenal Broadband. Still fortunate enough to go around sometimes in different countries. I'm off to the Philadelphia next month to see their supporters club, to go over there. And football gives you a lifetime of memories. I'm still enjoying football now, even though I stopped playing for the club 26 years ago. So for that, I think it is my greatest achievement, is to still be in the game, still be active, still have an opinion that some people want to listen to, or a story that someone wants to listen to. And I played I think, in probably one of the last eras where you're going to get that as well, because the modern footballer, it's a lot more polished, it's a lot more of a business. And I think when I go around and I do these things, people actually appreciate you kind of more now than they did back then. It goes back to like when you said about George Graham maybe not getting the appreciation that he deserved. I don't think he did straight after. There was a lot of controversy, weren't there, with payments and stuff like that. He still went on to manage a couple of clubs, but kind of forgot about what he did. But then you move 20 years down the line, and if George goes to the club now, he's absolutely adored by everyone. You appreciate it a few years later. You realise what you had. So yeah, my greatest achievements probably were where I am now. Did I achieve everything I wanted? Probably not. But I think you're as much a victim of your personality and everything else, as well as where you played football. I would have, like I said, I would have liked to have stayed with Arsene Wenger and moved on to that next level of football and understanding of football, because that's, I think, what he changed. He changed diets. He changed how people thought, the training process, the way the game was being played. I would have liked to have dipped my toes into that swimming pool for a little while, but no, totally no regrets. I've been very fortunate. I've been very lucky. Like I said, a long time after, still talking about it.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to kind of look back on memories, years later, or how many years later about it, because it's just great to think about what you've achieved and how fans see you now. And especially with like George Graham, I think, like you said, if he went back to the club, and when he has been back to the club, everyone has nothing but nice things to say about him, which I think is amazing. And I think for me, as like a younger Arsenal fan that didn't see that George Graham era. I think Wenger for me has completely changed football, and he did for me. And I think both managers, I feel like for me, it's great to see Wenger actually get a statue, but I personally would also give George Graham one as well. I think it's just great to have those two successful managers over the years, and I absolutely love that. And I did kind of want to go on a bit into the Arsenal now, and I would love to know if you could play with any current Arsenal player now, who would you want to play with? Because I know there's quite a few great players at our club right now.
Oh, well, I'd have to, looking at this, just this season, I would love to play alongside Declan Rice. I think
Yeah, he's
in
amazing,
that,
isn't
be
he?
alongside him in the midfield, he's just, he just controls everything. He's a strong player. And Erdegaard, I think, just to watch him on the pitch, the way he glides around. But you can go right across the team if you want to pick a defender. If I could play with Saliba. I mean, Ben White's pretty tidy at right back, but I think Saliba, just as a cool centre half to have behind you. That's just in the team now, but in between me finishing and now
Yeah,
there've been some unbelievable players. I've been lucky enough to play with a few of them in like Legends matches and stuff like that.
yeah,
Pires, playing along with Robert, Jeremy Aliadair. He's a great lad, still very fit. I like. But I think today's team, I'd probably just start daydreaming on the pitch. Just watching them play. It'd be hard to play my own game, but certainly I'd like to slot in alongside Declan Rice and spend 90 minutes alongside him. That'd be
yeah.
great.
It's hard really, because I think right now we're very fortunate to have such a great team, especially like last season, getting so close to winning the league, and this season hoping we can still do the same. I did kind of want to ask you about this season, because I think a few people have maybe said we don't seem to be like the same Arsenal as last season. Obviously we have lost Granit Xhaka, and he was a big player in our midfield. He was a big leader around the club, and obviously Partey does get injured a lot as well. But for you, do you feel like Arsenal kind of have improved this season, or do you think it's just a bit difficult right now to say because of like injuries and things?
I've got to say, definitely we've improved. You look at the
Yeah.
league table, we've not lost a
Mhm.
game. We've only conceded 8 goals, I think, joint lowest in the league. We're second joint top goal scorers. I
Mm.
don't think we was in that position this time last year, although we was playing exciting football, but we were. I don't think we was as consistently confident as we are now in games. You only got to look at the Sheffield United game. We was
Mhm.
very patient in that at the beginning. We took our time with things. We didn't make no mistakes at the back. We played the game as it needed to be. I think the players have shown a maturity. I think last season they may
Mhm.
have gone at that game like hammer and tongs from the start and tried to force the issue, maybe make mistakes and not be as competent in their victory. But I think so. I think the team's definitely matured. I
Mhm.
do worry that when we get a couple of injuries in significant places, yes, Eddie got a hat trick in that game, but is he going to get a hat trick if it's against Newcastle at the weekend? Is he going to get a hat trick against Aston Villa, who are doing really well this season? Is he going to get a hat trick against Liverpool? They're where the worries are for me when the one or two players are missing, like we saw against West Ham in the
Yeah.
cup midweek. You take a few players out, and it's not quite what Man City had when they could take 5 players out and put 5 top internationals back in. I think that's the level we need to get to. But in answer to your question, I think we have improved
Mm.
on last season. I think the goalkeeping situation has
Mm.
improved. Um,
Yeah.
I think the whole team plays a bit better, but I also do think you mentioned a player there. I think Granit Xhaka would still be able to play a massive part in this side.
Yeah, I think it's obviously quite hard, because I've always felt like in midfield we kind of do leave ourselves a bit short, because especially in the West Ham game, I completely get why we didn't play Declan Rice, because if he's injured, I think we will struggle. And I've always said I think we've got good midfielders, but I don't feel like they're on the same level as Partey or Declan Rice. So I think like you said, it's hard when you've got those injuries. It does leave you short. But I'm with you. I've said from the start, I think we do seem a lot more mature this season, and we aren't going for things too quickly. We're kind of taking it a bit slower, but in a good way, and we're fighting for those wins. And like, I think this season has been quite unpredictable. Unfortunately, Spurs are at the top at the moment, but I think regarding Man City, I think to have beaten them as well so far this season. I know they had Rodri out, but we also did have quite a few injuries in that game too. I think it just shows you that we are really improving. We're not letting last season, set us back. And I think that's a really good attitude to have. And I do think Arteta's got a big impact in the team. I did kind of want to get your thoughts on Arteta, because I sort of do see glimpses of a bit of George Graham in him, in the way that he's quite straightforward, and I think, you wouldn't want to mess with Arteta regarding his decisions and things like that. With the whole Aubameyang thing, he wasn't afraid, to get him out of the club and things like that. For me, I won't always agree with Arteta's decisions, but I think the job he has done at Arsenal is incredible. Like you said before, this is togetherness now at a club. A few years ago, in Wenger's last years, and when Unai Emery was here, there was a lot of kind of negativity around the club. But right now, things do seem to be changing. So I just would love to get your thoughts on Arteta and the job he's doing here at Arsenal.
Yeah, I think he does show characteristics definitely of George Graham. I think
Mm-hmm.
you with George, you always knew by the look on his face that you'd done something wrong or you disappointed him. And I think you need to know that. I think if you have a manager that doesn't let you know he's disappointed in you, that's too much of an easy ride. You can walk over them sort of managers. So from that point of
Yeah.
view, I think Arteta lets you know without going too far, without actually being abusive to you as a player
Mm-hmm.
or crossing the line. I think he knows how to make his players know, or to let them know, that he's not quite happy with them. And I think they accept that. And that's what we did with George, very similar, because of the honesty in, one, what they want to achieve out the game, two, how they're going to achieve it, and three, in your part to play in it. I don't think Mikel Arteta is bothered about asking a player who likes to run up and down the wing all day long to do a different job in the game. And I think as a player, some players don't want to accept that. They don't want to play different ways. They don't want to, I'm sure Havertz don't want to be stuck out on the wing half the time. He wants to play down the middle. But Arteta has a way of convincing him and making him understand it's best for the team. That's what George has got. That's through their honesty. So, yeah, he is like that. He's quite animated. He's had to temper himself down a bit this season. I
Yeah.
think in the first game, he got a yellow card for asking for a yellow card when you're not allowed to ask for a yellow card. So he's had to learn a few little bits, but he's very passionate. He's got a very good understanding. But what he's done, he has mirrored Pep Guardiola in the fact that it's
Yeah.
of making this family atmosphere, everyone taking care of themselves, everyone looking after themselves, which is fine when you're at the top of the league and you're doing well. It's a great attitude to have, but you've got to keep the team performing at the top of the league, because it's very difficult to run a team like that who are in the bottom half. So he's set his standards very high now with what he's achieved last season. The
Yeah.
only way you can move forward is by making the squad stronger and the bond stronger, and then hopefully, if they grow as a team, they'll achieve more. But he's certainly in it for the long term, like George was, like Arsene Wenger was. He's not a 2 seasons man
Yeah.
and then gonna leave us.
Yeah, definitely. I think Arteta has came to Arsenal. Obviously, at the start, it was a bit rocky, and I think it was hard because he had to bring in his own players, and that did take time. And obviously, as fans, we don't really have time and patience. So I think it kind of was hard to start off with, but I definitely think we are going in the right direction. I think people have been a bit harsh on him in the sense that he doesn't have the experience that other managers like Klopp has, and I do strongly believe we will win like a league under Arteta. I think potentially in a few seasons, the Champions League or whenever that will be. But do you think Arteta's inexperience has been a little bit of an issue, or do you just think we've just needed time to kind of get new players in? And we've had to bring in players like Declan Rice who really have made this team so much better, and that takes time and money. And obviously the Cronkays have really helped us recently. So do you think Arteta's inexperience has been an issue at all, or do you not think that?
I don't think he's inexperienced at all, because when you look at other managers, Klopp wasn't successful in the Premier League before he came. He wasn't successful in the Premier League before he came to the Premier League. That was his first taste of it. So yeah, he had experience in European
Yeah.
leagues. Everyone talks about the Premier League being a different league to play in as a player. I'm sure it's a different league to manage in as a manager as well. So it brings all sorts of new challenges. So I think every manager that comes to the Premier League for the first time in their career is basically starting a new job. It's
Yeah.
not like the old job they had. So I don't think Arteta was kind of was had any less experience than anyone else when it comes to that. He'd spent years alongside our Pep Guardiola at Man City, learning what goes on in the Premier League, learning how to look after Premier League players. So for me, he had a little bit of a head start, if you like. He'd had the background look at all the players. He knew how to understand them, how to get them to work. He'd been in an environment where the game plan certainly worked on and off the pitch. You know, no one has left Man City since since Pep Guardiola's been there under a cloud, really. Everyone's left happy, looked after, with a good career. Might have been one or two upset players along the way, but not many for a club like that, with that many that many high level pros. And I think that's what Arteta's taken from that. So I don't think he comes with any lack of experience. I think moving forward, he just needs to keep learning from every season, what's going on from every week, from after every international break when players come back, how to manage them, how to get the best out of them, because he's got to keep his best players on the pitch for 99% of the time. That's that's his next job. How do I do that? How do I keep everyone fit? But it's a learning curve, and he's definitely got all the players
Mm-hmm.
singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like a lot of players, especially a few that have maybe left, have said so much positive things about Arteta, and it's clear to see that we are going in the right direction. And I think he has needed time to bring in the right experience, especially like Declan Rice, obviously, who's done really well this season, and we've got Partey. Bit unsure about his situation, but I do think we've got a really bright future. And I think at the start when we were struggling, especially during lockdown, I know we did win the FA Cup, but before that, I think, his inexperience got questioned quite a lot. And I'm with you. I think working with Pep, if not the best manager right now or one of the best, I think for me, learning off him was amazing for Arteta and his development, and it definitely has helped him coming to Arsenal. So I do think that that experience has really helped him, and yeah, I do feel like really positive about Arteta right now. And obviously, the West Ham game was a really tough one, I think, for me. It did come as a bit of a surprise, and though the team was a little bit weaker, I did expect to see Saka, Declan Rice, a few others having a rest, because I think, making sure I don't get injured is another thing. And obviously we do have a Newcastle game coming up. Obviously the players will be devastated to be out of a cup, because I think for me, I see it as a trophy is a trophy. I know it's not the biggest cup, but I think the players would have wanted to win that. So how do you think their mindset will be going into the Newcastle game at the weekend?
I think they'll be absolutely keyed up for it. They'll be a little bit rested, one or two of them. Let the bruises and the little muscular injuries just settle down a little bit. They'll be ready and raring to go. And sometimes you need those games where it isn't a full first team playing, because that lets everybody know what level they're at, where they're at. You know, I know it might sound a bit harsh, but Saka will be watching the West Ham game from the bench, saying, "I know I could come on and make a difference."
Mhm.
So although he's not coming on and making a difference, the confidence in him will be growing for when he plays the game on Saturday. He'll be saying, "Right, I'm gonna what I couldn't do against West Ham in the week because I weren't playing. I can do against Newcastle. I can prove to the manager that I'm still number one because, you know, there's as far as I see it, I should have been playing in midweek. I didn't because I was rested. I understand that. But from a point of view of it being an important game, the cup games, I think they are too as well. I think it's always nice to stay in them. But this year we've got an opportunity in the Champions League. Got a decent group, so we can get through that. So there's potentially longevity in the Champions League, and you can't play in 3 competitions and compete for the Premier League as well, unless you was at Man City's levels what they were last year, and we're not there yet. So I think something's had to give, and Arteta's had to take a chance. Previously in previous seasons, when you've mentioned him having his little maybe mismanaged moments, if you like, you're only a good manager. You only have to manage when you're a manager when things are not going right. When your team's playing well and you ain't got to do much, all you got to do is turn up at training, pick the team, and you're only as good as your team are playing. So in that period you mentioned for Wenger, for Arteta, but just post-pandemic, I think he had a lot of issues. He had a lot of players with issues. We had the Aubameyang stuff, didn't we? And all of that going on. There was lots of different issues with different players, and he had a lot to look after and manage. And at the moment, things are going well. I think it's the easiest time ever to manage Arsenal because the team's picking itself. The players are playing all 8 out of 10 plus. So you've never got to face the fact that I need to drop someone for the next game because they played bad. So from the way I see it, his job's very easy at the moment, Arteta's, and that's the way he would like it to stay. Team picks itself, plays brilliant every week. All the rest of them compete to try and get in the team, and I'll have to play them in the cup games. But unfortunately, we haven't got that one cup now to play them in.
Yeah, I think with the cup game, like, I was obviously upset that we got knocked out, and I think it was the way we did as well. I think our performance really wasn't that great, and I think I can accept that because in the league we have really been focused. We've not really lost any games, and in the Champions League especially, we've done really well, and I'm really proud of the team for trying to go for both as well. And I think for me, I think the FA Cup for me would be a trophy that I really want us to go for. I know we do have the league, of course, and I want us to win that. But I feel like the FA Cup's a lot bigger than the Carabao Cup, but I still think, the players will be devastated as us because it's a trophy, like you said, at the end of the day. It's silverware that I think would be great for the team to win. And I do think it's time now to win something because I said last season we did so well, and it kind of, Arteta did so well, and obviously we didn't have a trophy to show how amazing we were. And last season, Man City will get all that praise because obviously they won the league, and it's a shame that we weren't able to win anything last season. So I think for me, this season it's going to be important for us to win something. I hope we can go for the league. I did want to also get your thoughts about the team for the weekend. I personally think Raya will be in goal because I think Arteta prefers him to Ramsdale. But I do want to get your thoughts on the goalkeeper situation because for me, it's a bit of a tough one because my heart's with Ramsdale because I think he's done so well over, the last few seasons. But I also get that Raya in some ways is a bit of an upgrade in some aspects of his game. But for you, what do you make of that situation, and do you expect Raya to play at the weekend?
Well, I'll answer your question first. Yes, I do. I think David will be back in for the game at the weekend. It is a strange situation. When it first rose its head, it was more of an issue of I'm going to rotate these goalkeepers. There was a lot of talk about rotation, and goalkeepers need to keep each other competitive by sort of pushing each other, and I can fit 2 goalkeepers in one game and all this. We've not seen that at all. So there's been no rotation at all. It's been Raya apart from Ramsdale coming in against West Ham. So So there was a little bit of maybe not dishonesty, but mistruth in the fact of why he wanted him in the first place. If he wanted him in because he feels he brings more to the team, I think it would have probably been better just to say that straight away. And I would imagine he's had a word with Aaron Ramsdale and said, look, he's in the team because he does this and that. And if you bring that to the table as well, he's got to consider it.
Yeah.
I think Ramsdale, it's very difficult to have two number ones at a club. I was never at a club when there was two number ones.
Yeah.
There was always a definitive line between the number one and the number two. And the number two was always happy to be the number two. It was, it was an unforsaken rule that you never spoke up as a goalkeeper. You just waited for your time. And then someone would come in, you'd fight for your place, you'd probably leave the number one spot. This hasn't happened, which is weird at Arsenal. I do think Raya brings a little bit more goalkeeping calmness, and sometimes Ramsdale's rapport with the fans can just look like he's maybe not concentrating as much. I don't want to say he started getting too big for his boots, but in the beginning it was a few little interactions. Now it seems to be more, but he lives off of that. He loves that part of the game, and that's what it makes you feel like when you're at the Emirates and the crowd want to join in with you. But I do think long term, I think Raya will be the man. He is as good in the air. His distribution, although has been questioned recently, he's been asked to play a slightly different type of football. That short passing around the box. He was bought for his long range capability and his outfield play, and I think he's shown that in abundance. And I think he will be Arsenal's number one. And if I don't want to say what's going to happen with players' future, but I don't think Aaron Ramsdale, with all the European Championships and stuff coming up, will be wanting to be not a club's number one when it's time for England selection processes. So there will be decisions that need to be made.
Yeah, like you said, it is a bit of a tough situation because for me, I did not expect, Raya to take Ramsdale's place. I do think Ramsdale does have a few mistakes in him, and I think we did see that moment last season, but I felt like he did so well and he made some amazing saves that I felt like we could forgive him for that, and it was okay because he was good for most of the time. But I think this season, I definitely think Raya is an amazing goalkeeper, and I think he's done so well because obviously, no disrespect to Brentford, but when you're at Brentford and when you're Arsenal, it is different. There are different expectations on you, and Arsenal are a team where you need to be competing with the best and you need to be up there, and especially in the top four, and especially going for the league like we did last season. And I do think Arteta's been thinking about things last season, about what he can improve on, which is really important to do. And I do think Raya has made a few mistakes, and it is quite interesting with fans online because when Raya made a few mistakes, everyone was like, bring Ramsdale back. And then when Ramsdale made a mistake in the game the other day, everyone just wants him to go. So I think for me, I just want Arsenal to win and do well. But I think if Ramsdale does leave, which I wouldn't be surprised if he did, because I think he doesn't deserve to be on the bench all the time, because I do think he's a great goalkeeper. But I would be really heartbroken personally, because I think I do want it to work out for him, but ultimately I want Raya to do well. So it's a hard situation to be in, but it will be interesting to see about the game at the weekend. I'm with you. I think we expect Raya to be in the team now, because I think Arteta has probably come to his decision now that Raya is the better goalkeeper, which is up to him to do that. But obviously, I think it's hard for Ramsdale, because I think in the game he probably was low in confidence, and I think when we were playing out from the back, I don't think we were good at that. I feel like we made a lot of mistakes, and West Ham were great at capitalising on that. So I do feel for Ramsdale too, because it must be really difficult for him. But I did also want to get your thoughts on Havertz as well, because it's obviously cost us a lot of money, 65 million. And with Chelsea players, when we've been buying them, they haven't always been a great success. I think for me, David Luiz has probably been a success out of all the ones we've got in recent years. But for you with Havertz, I thought he did okay in the first half. I thought he had a decent half. I think the second half he was a little bit quieter. But for you, do you think we need to give Havertz more time and patience for him to do well here?
Well, he divides opinion, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time, the way he plays, he doesn't look like he's that enthusiastic.
Yeah, he looks not bothered
Um,
sometimes.
yeah, he just sort of glides around, picking up the ball, laying it off. Good continuity player. Quite stony faced. He doesn't really show a lot of emotion, and I think you don't want to misread that. I think he covers a lot of ground. He works really hard. Um, I'd like to see him. What I've seen of him down the middle has been the best. He's been more direct, more involved, a little bit more aggressive when he plays down the centre. He's also very good in the air.
Yeah,
So I don't know why he's not used a little bit more in that middle area. But the manager has obviously, he likes Eddie. So if Jesus isn't available, it's normally Eddie that goes in there. But I think Havertz will settle into the position. Whether he has got enough about him to shine. We've seen when Odegaard first come, he was quiet. Now Odegaard shines in the team.
yeah,
Saka shines in the team. Martinelli can come on and just bring a glow to the side. I think they're the kind of players Arsenal need in the team to be playing. Players that just have that enthusiasm. And I'm not saying that he'll bring the rest of the team down, but I don't think he'll get as far as he could at Arsenal if he doesn't just liven himself up a little bit and just I don't know, just make people buy him more, buy
yeah,
into him. But I don't think he's a bad player. I think it was a lot of money for a player,
mm,
but he's got a pedigree. Arteta knows he's a quality player, which he is. It's just getting it out of him. You almost just want to go and give him a little shake and say, "Come on, 10% more, and you'll
yeah,
you'll be there." But he's another quality continuity player in the side, and it's about building a squad. And I don't think Arteta sees him as a number one in the team just yet. But we've got a few players like that. We've got Fabio Vieira. I'm still not completely sold on Fabio. He's delightful on the ball. He's a good little passer, and he's got his stats have gone through the roof, haven't they? A couple of assists. He's got a
mm,
couple of goals, and from coming on the sub, I wouldn't have said he'd have had that at the start of the season. But again, he's not someone who I see as a bit like Havertz, not threatening to secure a first team place and a first name on the team sheet. I don't see them as.
yeah. I do think we have a few players, like you said, with Fabio Vieira. I feel like, I think at the start of the season when he came on off the bench, he did make an impact, and the same with Trossard. I feel like with Trossard, he's amazing, and I feel like he gives us more of an impact in the game when he comes off the bench. And I think with Havertz, it's a difficult one because, like you said, it is divided by fans. I think obviously fans in real life and fans online can be quite different, and I'm sure fans in real life can be more positive and getting behind the team, and there are positive fans online, of course, but I think a lot of fans are a bit, I've given him a chance and they're not really seeing enough right now. I felt like in the first maybe 20 minutes or the first half of the West Ham game, I felt like he had this attitude that he wanted to make things happen, and like you said, he not that he's lazy, but he has that like a facial expression of like he's not bothered. But like we said, we know he works really hard and he tries to do things on the ball and in the game. So, I just really hope it does work out for him. I want him to obviously do well, and I hope Arteta can get the most out of him because Arteta has shown that he can. With Granit Xhaka, when he was going through a lot at Arsenal, he was about to leave, and Arteta changed his mind, and Arteta really made Granit Xhaka a better player. So I do hope with Havertz that can be the case. But I think at this moment in time, I think all we can do is support Havertz, and I would definitely want to see him try up front, and maybe in the Newcastle game, it might be a risk to do that because it is a must-win game for us. Um, But before we go, I did want to get your thoughts. I'd love to know your score predictions for the Newcastle game at the weekend.
My score predictions for the Newcastle game is going to be 2-0 to Arsenal. I think they're going to keep a clean sheet because we've been pretty decent away from home. I think they'll be back on it after a couple of players having a rest midweek. And I think Arsenal have got a decent record against Newcastle. They've not been too much trouble for us, even in the last few years when they've been playing well. So, yeah, I'm looking for the team to go to St James Park and get a result. And I think it will be 2-0. That is my prediction.
Hopefully it is. Hopefully we'll win. I think it will be a tough game. I'm going to go 2-1 to Arsenal. I do feel like we'll win it. I'm probably not as confident as I want to be because of the West Ham game, and I hope for the players that they can just move on from it, forget it, and just for the league, it's so important that we do win that game. And I think it's away from home, so I know that might be a bit difficult, but and I hope Odegaard does play as well, because when he came on in the West Ham game, that goal will definitely help his confidence. So fingers crossed, we'll get that win. But David, it's been an absolute honour to chat with you today. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for coming on.
I've enjoyed talking with you, Sophie. It's been lovely. Anytime.
Yeah, absolutely love that, and I hope you guys watching this back do enjoy this video. But don't forget to smash that like button as well, and subscribe. But fingers crossed Arsenal can get that win, and we definitely need it right now for the league. But yeah, it's been an honour to chat with you, David. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and I will see you all in my next video.